Welcome to Bible Study with Fred. I'm going to be reading Exodus chapter 14, starting in verse 15, going through the end of the chapter. Uh, should be verse 31. So let's begin here. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward. But lift thou up thy rod and stretch out thine hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will give me honor upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, upon his chariots, upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the angel of God was before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that one came not near the other all the night. God commands Moses to raise the rod in his hand and hold it out towards the sea. There are two northern arms of the Red Sea. One on the west is the Gulf of Suez, and on the right is the Gulf of Aqaba, separated by the Sinai Peninsula. Some commentators have the Hebrews crossing the Gulf of Suez, while others have them traversing across the Sinai Peninsula to get to the Gulf of Aqaba and crossing there into what is now Saudi Arabia, which is very questionable to me. The Gulf of Suez makes more sense as the Sinai Peninsula will be to its east. The angel of God now moves from his position of leading the children of Israel to getting between them and the Egyptian army. To the Egyptians, he was darkness, but to the Israelites, he gave light. God does give light now to those who will believe, but he confounds the minds of those who will not, casting them into the darkness they desire. Isaiah 66:4. I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fears upon them, because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear. But they did evil before mine eyes, and chose that in which I delighted not. 2 Thessalonians 2:11 and 12. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Now we'll pick it up in verse 21. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued, and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked upon unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw the great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and the servant Moses. Now, and what had to be a terrifying picture in front of them, the sea divided over the night under the influence of a strong wind, creating a dry pathway to the other side. The Israelites exited across the dry pathway that God had made, with the water standing high on either side of them. Pharaoh and his army plunged in after them furiously. One can easily imagine what happened next. The dry ground starts to become a mass of mud, and chariot wheels come off. Panic sets in among the soldiers between the walls of water. Due to the time frame allowed, this event clearly happened at a branch of the Red Sea that was just wide enough for this many people to make this trip in these hours. Moses raised his rod, and the waters returned on the Egyptian army, and all of them, included the Pharaoh himself, were drowned. This is celebrated in the Bible in many places. Deuteronomy 11:4. And what he did unto the army of Egypt, unto their horses, and to their chariots, I made the water of the Red Sea overflow them as they pursued after you. How the Lord hath destroyed them unto this day. Nehemiah 9:11. Thou didst divide the sea before them, so that they went through the midst of the sea on dry land, and the persecutors thou threwest into the deeps as a stone in the mighty waters. Psalm 78:53. And he led them on safely, so that they feared not, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. Hebrews 11:29. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians are saying to do were drowned. The best part of the mightiest army of the world's greatest superpower is now destroyed. The leadership of Egypt is crushed, with the Pharaoh following his heir, his firstborn, in death. There is now a vacuum of power in that part of the world. A human leader and his mighty army have come up against God and been vanquished in a moment in time. 2 Thessalonians 2:8. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. All right, we'll stop there and pick it up starting in 15 next. Please read your Bible, study your Bible, cross-reference the verses. Ask God for wisdom and understanding, and then share your interpretation with somebody else. Thank you.